Have we met?
Hi, I'm John. This is Ryan.
Hello.
We are 2 of 4 people of Hello Carolina. And, we just have things that we want to talk about and explore. And that's, I guess, what we're here to do today.
Yeah. I mean, I think the topic today is going to be about a pretty hot, I wouldn't say it's a hot button, but it's more of a, it's about UFOs and aliens.
So, I mean, it really just depends on your sphere of, influence, I guess, because, I think it's an extremely hot button topic, in the circles that I follow, anyway, online and stuff,
yeah.
It's actually really interesting to hear you say that it's not a hot button issue, because I feel like it's kind of
Even more.
everything right now, in the zeitgeist of, what's important in news and stuff right now, especially after what happened up in New Jersey last year with all the drones and stuff. Because I think it's worth saying that UFOs doesn't necessarily mean there are aliens and flying saucers and stuff up there. There's just technology, and who knows what's up there at this point, is kind of how I view it anyway. Yeah. And I mean, that seems to be the consensus out of everything that came out of New Jersey too, because there were some pretty high level people, it seemed like, that were saying some pretty wild things about what was going on up there. And all of it ended up being, I guess the Trump administration came out and said that it was all authorized drone flights and stuff. Everything's normal here, nothing to see.
Yeah.
Go on with your day. And, I don't know. That's after they say that after I can't remember the name. That's going to be a problem with the podcast. And I hope I improve with this, is that I'm bad with names and remembering
it don't matter.
Minutia. Yeah.
It don't matter. We're just
the details. You
don't need details. We're just giving you our opinions.
Right. Yeah. But there was either, I want to say it was a congressman, maybe a senator from New Jersey, that came out and said that there was a Iranian mothership off the coast that was launching drones over to take surveillance. And you have an official saying things like that when there's apparently no evidence to back it up. What are we doing?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because that's not just a rumor that goes floating through the ether of media. That sticks in a lot of people's minds when they hear stuff like that. And
yeah, well,
it's wild.
I saw a video, and I think this was on TikTok. I try to stay off there as much as I can. It gets addictive, but it was a organized drone sequence, and I've never seen anything like this. But of course they have to have this dun 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 music behind it to draw in the dramatization of this whole thing, And so you got the music. They've really judged it up, you know what I mean? And so it shows I want to say at least 1,000, probably more drones that immediately, all within split seconds of each other, all moving in tandem.
Right.
And that's a whole another thing that's sort of a kind of a threat.
Absolutely. That's one of the most terrifying things about modern day warfare, I think, is what drone capabilities are going to be, what they're going to be capable of. Because I mean, these are not people don't have to be in them for them to be effective in, military goals and stuff like that. So, I mean, of course they're going to be the breakthrough technology. That's where all the funding's going as far as the military goes. So,
yeah.
Of course, that's where you're seeing the most stuff right now, I think. And that's why a lot of people think what they're seeing up in the sky right now is drones, because it makes all the sense in the world that it's drones. But yeah, as far as the big sequenced multi-drone events and stuff that you see them a lot around New Year's and stuff. And
yeah,
I see a lot of stuff online where it's look at these Chinese drones and what they're capable of. And then it'll be kind of like you said, ominous music while they make a dragon in the sky with all these drones. And It's
Yeah.
just like that is crazy. Like coordination and stuff, I guess, is what that shows primarily.
But then in the same sense, you've got like that and like militia type stuff that they associate with drones. But then you've got like during Christmas time, like Santa Claus, like it's shaped of Santa Claus in the sky. Like
Right,
I
yeah.
think with everything, there's this like good part of it and bad part, just like the AI conversation. And I do not want to go down the AI hole. I feel like that could be a whole other like series of podcasts. We could talk about that. But
Yeah, no, I
to
agree.
compare
Yeah.
apples to apples, AI can be used a lot for good, but Jesus, it could be used for a lot of bad if it gets in the right hands, and it will.
Right. Well,
So-
I mean, AI and a force that is that powerful just requires so much responsibility that I'm not sure we have as a race of people. Like humans have not been very responsible historically.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Right.
We're responsible people.
Yeah, but I don't know. As far as drones and stuff go, like that's all stuff that's so far out of our hands. Like, I think it's fun to talk about. And I mean, it's good to know about these types of things, but
We're just along for the ride,
right. What can you do about it? Like, if they're making Santa Claus and his sled fly through the sky on Christmas Eve, then they can make his sled fly into my house.
Yeah.
Is the fact of the matter, and there's nothing I can do about that. So,
Yeah, and then there's this gaining issue of espionage and spying, and I mean, I think just the other day, I was in my front yard, and I just heard it
Really?
was like I think it was just a realtor, like trying to get over my house.
Yeah.
And there was somebody down, I couldn't see him with the remote, and they were trying to do an aerial shot, which is fine, but I mean, it flew right over. I guess if there is jurisdiction of airspace, it was in my airspace. But yeah, I think that's going to be an issue we're going to have to address at some point. But
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of wild because, I mean, just going around shooting music videos and stuff, like, I've seen Tomlin play around with his drone a little bit, and just watching somebody play with one, it's just like, wow, it's kind of wild that we're allowed to do this. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be allowed to mess with them, but yeah, it does seem like there's a weird line that's being crossed, and of course people are using them for ill intent and whatnot to be creeps, and
yeah,
that's unfortunate. But yeah, I don't know. It just kind of muddies the water when you're putting more stuff in the sky right now. Like,
yeah.
and there's nothing to be done about it. But
Well, to zero in, like, I'm super curious about your experiences that you've had in the past couple weeks.
so, being that I've seen things multiple times at this point, and since I am going to talk about an experience, I want to give the full scope of
Sure. Yeah.
where I'm coming from in regards to UFOs and stuff like that. So like, I believe there's probably something out there. I'm not obsessed. I've looked into stuff. I'm aware of who people like Bob Lazar is, and I've kept up with some of the military stuff as far as the David Grush hearings and stuff recently, and so like I'm aware of things, and I pay attention, and I don't know, I do look at the stars every now and then, not because I'm looking for UFOs even necessarily. I'm just kind of a little bit of a stargazer,
Oh, yeah, me too.
I also put birdseed on my porch, I do these kind of like hippie things, I guess. Look at my hair. Like these are parts of who I am. And but as far as strictly by the book, unidentified flying objects, or the new thing is UAP, the I guess unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, when I was, this is before the recent week stuff. So let's go back to I guess I was probably like 21-ish. It was around those years. I couldn't nail this down. I was at a friend's house. There was a few of us over there. And I think there was 4 of us that were all standing outside at the time. 2 people were kind of facing this way, and me and another one of our friends were facing the opposite direction. And this all happened over a period of like 3 or 4 seconds. It was so fast. Like, just like trying to process what you see in these moments is so difficult because it's so fleeting. It's there. You're like, what? And then it's gone. And then it's just like, did I just see something? Or like, I don't know. Did I blink and like, I don't know, bust a vessel in my eyeball or something? And like, I don't know. You question yourself in these moments, but luckily I had a friend standing right next to me that was just also like, what? But this was, like I said, over the period of 3 or 4 seconds, a ball of light. This was it wasn't a stormy night, but there was like heat lightning in the sky. And, you know, kind of moving along with the heat lightning, I think, and this was a long time ago, so it's hard for me to remember once again the fine details of it, but I remember the ball of light, and I remember it dropping down like quickly, like just like kind of separating from the lightning, dropping down, like relatively.
What color was it?
Like lightning, pretty much, kind of like. And to kind of jump ahead here, I've heard about things like ball lightning. People talk about that as a phenomenon in itself, and I think that's probably what this was. But, you know, I think ball lightning is also kind of disputed amongst some people anyway. I don't know.
It could be like a sexual term too.
Yeah.
So we got some ball lightning for you.
Yeah, the gods were feeling frisky.
Yeah. And there's also like this thing that we just discovered. I think I don't quote me on any things that I say, but
absolutely. We're speculating here. It's fine.
I'm a little hazy on the actual one we discovered, but it has not been very long since we've known that they exist. They're called Sprites.
Sprites.
Yeah, and it's actually lightning that goes up out of our atmosphere, and really you can only see it if you're in space. Wow. And it's pretty wild. If y'all get a chance after you listen to this whole podcast, look up Sprites. It's pretty cool. But anyways, go ahead.
No, that's actually really interesting. Because like I've heard stuff like that before about, I can't remember. Yeah, that's really weird. That like kind of triggers like something for me where like I've heard that somewhere before.
Yeah. About
lightning going out of the ground instead of, you know, coming out of the atmosphere or whatever.
Well, I think you're mistaken that because there's like 2 different things. I think actual lightning. Now we're starting to talk about science. So again,
fraud.
We are not scientists.
No.
But I think that lightning does technically start from the ground up, but it's from the top down. So there is that part of the the
that's
physics
what I've heard then. Yeah, okay.
And mechanic of like how lightning works.
Right,
but
so see, I'm smart. I did know that. I just didn't know that it was a real thing.
Yeah. And then you've got sprites that start way, way up in the upper atmosphere and like literally go out into space.
Right. Okay. So honestly, like that's potentially like what I saw essentially, maybe like the whole experience.
I think you saw aliens.
It could be a fairy for all I know. Like, I don't know, but this thing drops out of the sky and it hovers. I don't know. I'm a football person, so I'm going to use yards, I guess, and that might seem weird, but like, I don't know, 50 to 60 yards in the sky is where this thing just hovers for literally like a second or two.
And how far away is it from your house?
This isn't at my house. It's at a friend's house.
Oh, at a friend's house. Okay.
That 4 of us are hanging out at the time. And, I mean, from the house, like, I don't know, 40 yards.
40 yards away.
Yeah,
and
it's hard to.
up.
I'm not great with distance. Let me be clear. But, you know, we're standing down on the ground, then there's the porch, then the house is up there, and then about, like I said, about 40 yards probably above the top of the house. Or, I don't know, something around that area. But anyway, it comes down and then just bloop, shoots off. So we didn't know what to make of that. Like, we didn't like freak out or anything, but we were definitely, me and Dustin, my friend who was standing next to me and saw it, we were blown away by it, I guess, at first, like, just because of the oddity of it. And then, like, the two people that we were standing outside with just had no idea that it happened. And, like,
They weren't even.
right. It's weird because, like, to me, my perception of it was that it kind of lit up the area a little bit, like lightning would, essentially.
But you're talking about something that moves in, freezes in, suspends
stopped.
itself completely.
Yeah, it did stop, yes.
And then takes off. Now, I do have a question. When it takes off, did it take off at drone-like speed, or did it take off at, like, inhuman ability speed?
That's my gut answer to that is like in human ability speed, but that's hard to say.
Okay.
Because that was at a time when I didn't know like drones were much of a thing. Like I would have, I mean, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. Like I said, I convinced myself after the fact that it was probably ball lightning. So like something that moves like more like lightning than a drone, I would say that's how I would describe it. But that was the first time I ever saw something that I was like perplexed by.
Yeah.
At first sight anyway, like that was just kind of weird. Then after that, for the most part, it's just been like shooting stars and stuff. Like I see a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I see a lot of shooting stars.
Me too, dude. I know people that have never seen them, and they're like in their 40s, and I'm like, how have you never seen a shooting star? Do you not look up?
Yeah, Emily saw the first one that she ever saw the other night in the middle of the next story that I'm about to tell.
Okay.
So this was the beginning of my most recent UAP experience. Was
now this one you're about to explain, is it a similar fashion of how it happened, or is something completely different?
This is vastly different. Yeah,
oh, okay.
This is, the first story was just to inform the audience of my experience with UFOs as a whole, because there's a lot of people that, especially lately, like I said, I think UFOs are a hot button topic because I see all the time people talking about UFO experiences that they obviously, to me anyway, like they're bullshitting. Like,
well,
I'm just trying to be transparent. Like,
yeah. Well, I got to ask, have you had any random phone calls calling you, referring to you as Starseed?
Not yet.
Okay.
I've been hoping for them.
Okay.
I've been waiting, but no, not quite. So, I guess at this point, about 3 weeks ago, this all started. I get home from work. I leave work at 6 o'clock. We recently just went through the time change. So it was a lot darker when I got home from work 3 weeks ago than it is now. So about 6:30 is when I get home, and I get out of my car. Pretty recently, within the last like 2 months, I had realized that out in my backyard, you can see Mars. It sits there, big orange star, and that's something that I think is cool.
And hold me accountable for this. Right now, it's pretty dang close to the moon right now, isn't it? Like the way that's oriented every night right now, Mars is pretty close to the moon.
Yeah, like it's kind of, I don't remember the name of the other stars, but there's like, it's kind of in a triangle with two other really bright stars up there. And like pretty recently, like it has been getting pretty close to the moon. Yeah, I've noticed it getting closer.
Okay.
But obviously, it still depends on what time you're looking. It doesn't.
Yeah,
it's not all the same speed, I don't think. But anyway, I get out of my car when I get home, and immediately, there's big ass bright Mars back here in my front yard, and I'm just like, oh, look at it. And then, like out of the corner of my eye, I see something that looks like a star, but it's moving, and I'm like, just staring at it for a minute, like trying to figure out. Once again, just like in a trying to process it, just like, what am I looking at? Because obviously I've taken in all this information about drones and UAP and all this shit lately. So interested in it. And I'm watching it, and then I see another one, and it looks like the exact same thing. And like I said, that's my perception of it. Like, I'm not saying for sure that they are stars moving. I'm saying that's what it looked like. Could it be something a lot smaller and just bright that's a lot closer than I'm picking up on? Absolutely. 1,000,000%. That could be the case.
Two theories on that, but unless you have more to tell on that one.
Yeah, I got.
Okay, keep going. I got two theories on that one.
So I'm watching these two. You know, in my mind, I'm thinking like, are those two stars that are moving, or like, what is this? And they look like they're on a collision course. Like, and I'm sitting there, and like, as they're getting closer, I'm like, like kind of drawing back a little bit, because like, you know, I don't know, like pretty recently we hear about this like comet that's going to hit Earth or something like that. Yeah. And there's like a 1.5% chance.
Yeah. Yep.
But like, you know, you see shit like that, and then that kind of like sinks into your brain whenever you're talking about this kind of stuff. So like, I'm seeing these two things, and it looks like they're about to collide, and like I get really scared, honestly, for a second, because I'm like, is something?
Oh, they were kind of moving towards each other.
Yeah. They were like on a collision course, like with each other. It looked like, and like I said, I had a moment where I was like really scared, because I thought something like was about to happen, like right outside of our atmosphere or something, and like I don't know what that means for me. Yeah, like, I don't know how that's gonna work. Anyway, they reach each other, and then they're obviously not at the same altitude or whatever. I don't know. To me, they don't collide. Okay. I see them keep going.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's pretty weird. Emily pulls in because she gets home from work. And at that point, I'm just kind of distracted from it. And I tell her, like, I was like, that was kind of weird. And I kind of describe it to her. But I go back inside. Like I said, don't think too much of it. Or I don't go back inside. I go inside. And from there, every time I let the dogs out at night, I'm looking up because I don't know what it was. Yeah. I don't know what the time frame is exactly here. But a few days, maybe a week later, something like that. This was all over the span of about a 3-week period, I guess. And I'm looking again at it. This is after I've been home from work for a while. One night, it's fully dark in the sky. You know, I'd say maybe around 8 p.m. or something like that. I go outside, I start seeing the same stuff. I think 1 or 2 of them is what I see initially. It's just stars, like not a flashing light, no blinking, just a solid light in the sky.
Moving at a nice steady pace. Nice
steady speed.
Okay.
And fast too. Like, yeah. Maybe not like what you see some UFO fast type stuff is described as. Maybe not that fast, but obviously it's scooting. It do be scooting. And I see 1 or 2 of them, and Emily's home at that point when I'm seeing them, and I'm like tracking them. And like I call Emily outside, and she sees them. And we stand outside for about 5 or 10 minutes, and we see somewhere in the neighborhood of like 10 to 12 of these things, like different directions. There's no like pattern to them or anything that I've noticed. Like, I don't know. But we stand outside and we watch about 10 to 12 of them. Emily, while we're standing out there, for the first time, sees a shooting star in her life.
Awesome. Perfect.
Also, so we accomplished that, if nothing else. Yeah. But
I've got a really strong theory on that.
Okay.
Not theory, but assumption, I guess, would be.
All right. I mean, that was the most eventful night that I've seen them. I've seen them after that twice. The most recent time was the 10th of this month, March 10th. That was a few days ago. Saw 2 of them. And I mean, they don't do anything. They're just lights. They they disappear kind of in a weird way because like they don't disappear like on the horizon. Some of them do, some of them don't. Like some of them look like the light just kind of goes out, and you know, you can take from that what you will.
Yeah.
Me and Emily were watching one that she said that she thought, and I agreed with her heavily, but I didn't want to say it really, but it looked like it went like just outward.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to make of such a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the bulk of that. That is my story.
Okay, cool. So the first story, the ball of lightning, I have no idea. Could be a drone, but from your description, I don't even have a remote like explanation to that.
Yeah.
I do feel like I'm about 80 to 90% sure what you saw in the second one.
Sure.
Because I've seen it before and I've looked it up, and this is more prevalent now and every year moving forward. Now, quote, there's still a 20% chance that what I'm saying is just complete flooey.
Yeah.
So what I think you saw were satellites, and one of them could even be the ISS. So if you look up, and when you get a chance, look up all the active satellites that are orbiting around Earth right now.
Are those on the like flight tracker apps and stuff like that? Probably not, right?
Probably not.
Because I did
sure.
look when I was seeing all this stuff. I did look on the flight tracker apps because, you know, I really didn't think they were planes or anything of that nature just because of how far away they looked. But you know, I was looking anyway, and you know, it seemed silly, especially because you'd see a plane fly over and be like, "Well, that's not what it is."
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as satellites, it could definitely be a satellite. I've never seen so many.
Yeah. And I'll tell you a reason why we're seeing a lot more too.
Right.
If that's what you saw, not saying it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly possible. Like 1,000,000%.
So even around here and I remember the summer, just in even our area, you could see what's called a train, a satellite train. And Elon sends, I don't know, a dozen or so.
Yeah, I've seen those before, yeah.
Into orbit weekly. I mean, and now there are thousands and thousands. And how they don't collide with each other just baffles me. And y'all can comment if that one has collided. Maybe it's happened before.
Right, yeah, that's weird. For one, I didn't know that he was doing it like frequently. Like I knew that he'd sent some of those trains out. I remember maybe like a year ago or something. I remember seeing one of those big. Yeah, I mean, now that you say it, I mean, yeah, it definitely could be something like that because it does look similar to those, but you know, not in a line. Like there's not a line of them; they're individually moving,
right? Yeah,
on their own volition, and I mean. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I would like to see some numbers on like how many are up there and stuff like that.
Dude, there's a lot. There's so many of them, and the more they get up, the better Starlink internet gets. I mean, I'm not trying to sell Starlink to anyone because I mean.
The man doesn't need more money.
No,
like,
and
if you need Starlink, then it can be convenient. And I mean, it's a great service, honestly. But
people that are like out in the sticks, you know, used to have like HughesNet, and it was awful. And then you can switch to Starlink now and get almost pretty much high speed internet. But you know, given the political climate that we live in right now, it might be people throwing them away at this point. I don't know.
Yeah,
but I try to stay out of that, but. I really do believe that I'm fairly confident what you were seeing there were satellites.
No, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I just had no idea that there was that many of them up there. Like, I knew that he'd launched some stuff, and like, yeah, it's just to see that many. It's surprising if there's that many satellites. Then yeah, that blows my mind. Yep. But yeah, I would fully believe that 100%. Like, I don't know.
But I do want to give this. I do think that there is a strong possibility, and probably a very unlikely probability that there isn't any other life beyond us. in as far as other beings. So I'll give you these numbers because I'm a nerd about this. They're not exact numbers, and again, I'm not a scientist. Don't quote me on any of these things. But I do watch a lot of like Neil deGrasse Tyson, a lot of stuff like that, and I get into that stuff. So just to put into context, there are billions of solar systems in our galaxy. Mm-hmm. We are the Milky Way galaxy. This is our solar system. We have our planets here. Well, how many do we have? 8 or was it 9?
9 planets because the 10th planet is the conspiracy planet.
The old Pluto.
The planet Nibiru.
Oh yeah, and then Pluto too. So
yeah, the false planet.
I still have a textbook that says Pluto's a planet.
Yeah, I mean, it seems
I'm aging myself right now.
Man, that seems like such a weird hill for them to climb. Like, just leave Pluto alone.
Neil has a really good explanation about why they determined that it wasn't a planet. But I'm not going down that rabbit hole today. But back to what I was saying, there are so think about the size of our solar system. Mm-hmm. It would take, just for us to travel thousands of miles an hour to get to just Mars, would take a year for man to get there. The Cassini, I believe, is the satellite that we sent out that had recordings of us. I think there was like some classic rock, some soul. It's on this golden record that just spins all the time.
Sure.
This is a cool little fact that maybe not a lot of people know about. I'm pretty sure it's the Cassini. If not, I'm going to get a full load of comments and be like, dude, it's this, it's not that. But
hey, you got to drive engagement that way. You just say the wrong thing on purpose so people correct you in the comments.
Right, yeah. Correct me in the comments.
The TikTok way.
So that is the farthest man-made object. And right now, it's in the Kuiper Belt, which is like the outer part of our solar system. And it's been traveling since, I want to say, either the late 60s or early 70s. We need a laptop guy to look this stuff up for us. But anyways, so I'm just want to like build my story here about like the sheer size of things. So we know of, we're the only living organisms lives here. Everything on this earth. Yeah. Carl Sagan, he'll flip that little satellite back, or I think it was around Neptune, and you could see this little pale blue dot. You could look that up too at some point. The pale blue dot, it's gold. It's good. What he said at the moment, but so to give you the size, we have had this thing traveling at almost, if not near the speed of light. It very, very fast. And it's headed away from us, and it has this golden record that plays. It's got human languages on it. It's got photos of us to maybe reach someone out there. But it's not even out of our solar system yet, and it's traveling at an astronomical speed. And it's in the Kuiper Belt, which is like the outer part of our solar system.
Sure.
So let's think about that size right now. Think about how big that is, how long it's been traveling since like the late 60s, 70s. So that's one solar system. We have, that we can see, we have computers that study how many different solar systems that are in our Milky Way galaxy. It's a spiral galaxy. And it's light years across. There's millions of galaxies like ours millions of solar systems like ours in our Milky Way galaxy. Mm-hmm. So if we haven't even reached out of our solar system, traveling at that speed, much less, I think the next nearest galaxy is the Andromeda galaxy, which is like a couple light years away from us. Mm-hmm. So let's think about that. We can't even get to the nearest solar system in eons of time, much less the other side of our Milky Way galaxy. But here's what's really, if you don't know a lot about this stuff, here's what's really going to blow your mind. So we have 1 million or so galaxies a million of so I keep getting this wrong. 1 million or so solar systems in our galaxy.
Yeah.
But there are 1 million
Galaxies in the universe.
In the universe.
Right.
So we're looking at trillions and trillions and trillions of planets in all these.
We
galaxies.
Yeah. And see, like, I do wonder what is the bigger, like, statistical anomaly there. Is just like, is it stranger that, you know, we've gone so far and not seen anything yet? Or is it stranger that we would be the only thing in all of this space?
Yeah, which is more odd.
Right. And, like, I don't know.
There's the question, like, you've got trillions of planets that could be like the Goldilocks zone, habitable Earth-like planets that we can see from telescopes. We can see planets. They read it by like how much light is refracted from a star. When a planet travels, we can't see the planets, but when they travel in front of the star, it measures how much light is lost.
Yeah,
because it blocks that light when it goes over it. So we know that there are planets in other galaxies, you know, other solar systems, and I mean, there's trillions of them. So the probability of there not being other life, it may not look anything like us.
Have you seen
the weirdest things? But you know,
have you seen the scans of Mars that came out recently? So there is I think it is Arizona State University has a program set up where they are doing imaging of Mars, and they released an image that at least Twitter and Facebook caught onto pretty hard, where there is what looks like a symmetrical square structure. Like, and it, you know, you can't see the whole thing. It looks like it's hard to say what it could possibly be, but it is straight lines and it is right angles, and
not natural.
It doesn't look like something that would naturally form.
I thought you were about to say like you could see Jesus's face sculpted into the sand.
Well, there is like
the toast.
It's weird that you say that, because like, have you ever heard of this like face on Mars thing? Like, do you know what that's about?
Yeah,
I've
like, seen it.
I haven't looked into this, but like I mentioned this square structure to my mother a few weeks ago, and yeah, she brought that up about the face on Mars, and then like randomly I heard about it again on a podcast I was listening to, and yeah, it's just, I don't know. It was a weird reoccurring thing that I heard about there for a minute. I need to look into that, because I mean, things like that are interesting. I don't know.
I would say, and this is not from my own mind, this is from other brilliant minds, way smarter than me, that know these things about the human mind, but we're extraordinarily do a really good job of putting dots together and making things visual in a pattern that are familiar to us. We do that a really, really good job at that.
Right.
Like, I can, up in our room, we have our like tongue and groove wood, they're pine slats above us. And there's pine knots and all this stuff. And I can count out so many different 2 eyes and a nose and a mouth, like, dude, in like 100 different places.
In my childhood bedroom, I had a spot on my popcorn ceiling where I could see Bugs Bunny every night before I went to sleep.
See, like, we're so good at that.
Yeah, we have a strange ability to distort reality in order to see something familiar. Yeah, I think, and I mean, I don't know. It's a weird thing that we do as humans.
But in the same sense, like, I can go ahead and say like, yeah, well, there's a scientific explanation for everything. But I am sitting here saying that it would be stranger if we weren't the only other people, we other human living organisms in this universe. It would be very odd.
Right. So I've been kind of, I've thought about it a lot lately, and I've been pretty historically kind of cagey about, is there life or whatever. And like pretty recently, I mean, I'm just at this point, I feel like something else is obviously going on. I don't know that I would say there's other people out there. There's something, and I don't know, like I've heard a lot of stuff recently about, or really just speculation about like multidimensional beings and things of that nature, and things that can, maybe be here, but we're not perceiving it because they could be, on some other plane of existence, I guess is like the wording for it. I don't know.
There's a good theory behind that. Or I don't know, hypothesis theory,
whatever it is.
Thing, whatever.
We'll become scientists by a year down the road of this podcast.
Yeah, we'll eventually evolve from Neanderthals to.
In 2 years, we will sit here with white lab coats on podcasting.
Yeah, but as of now, we're not scientists. Right. But yeah, so there's this thing called, and again, I get a lot of this information just super smart people, and it's like nerdy talk, but. It's like the zookeeper. It's called the zookeeper theory, and it's they're there, but they're so above us we don't know they're there.
Yeah,
it's like we're the farm animals this time, and they're the zookeepers. So it's like they could be so advanced, so intelligent, so above us that they're among us. We just have no clue that they're there, and they're beyond our constraints.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a risky subject, especially in this area specifically. But like, as far as I'm concerned, like, I think there is every possibility that we're talking about something that maybe people used to call God. Like, I don't know.
This has been brought to you by so and so Mount Bethel Baptist Church.
I don't know. I don't know where you stand religiously, and I don't think it's overwhelmingly important. But I think if people are willing to believe the types of things that they believe in their religions, if it weren't for those religions keeping them from believing other things, everything else doesn't sound that crazy. Like not like what you think. Like I don't know, if you're willing to talk about resurrection, then why aren't you willing to talk about multidimensional beings as far as like what we understand about reality? Like, I don't know.
I don't know if I'm quite ready to like get too elaborate like on my stance.
Yeah.
But I will tell you one thing
fine.
that bugs the shit out of me. And it's this ark that was built, this life-size ark that was built in Kentucky. And there's fucking dinosaurs in them.
Dude, Bill Nye has a video on YouTube where he tours it and just like rips it apart as he's walking through it. I think the owner is the owner of the ark is, I think it's a guy named Ken Ham, maybe.
That sounds familiar.
Bill Nye walks through it with the owner of it and like just picks it apart piece by piece. And I don't want to criticize people for believing it. I think it's a little far-fetched to buy into some of that stuff. But like I said, if I'm going to believe in multidimensional beings, then I can save some space for dinosaurs on boats. So,
yeah. There's this like major gap here. That the ark is based off of like 2,000 some years ago, right? Or maybe even if we did 5,000 years ago.
Well, I think
dinosaurs were around millions of years ago. Like there's a major gap.
Well,
there.
see, like then you're kind of getting into a weird space because like you're working in two different realities at that point because like two things cannot be true here.
Yeah.
Honestly, like. Or at least as far as the time frame goes, like, can there be dinosaurs and like the biblical stuff? Sure, but they're not happening at the same time as what these opposing sides think they are.
Yeah.
So,
there were dinosaurs, when supposedly Jesus walks Earth, but those dinosaurs are your reptiles. Those are your Komodo dragons. They're your horseshoe crabs. They're like super hardy. They survive that massive asteroid that pretty much wiped. I mean, the birds, like any birds that you're seeing today.
Right.
I think pterodactyls among like horseshoe crabs and maybe a few smaller reptiles.
What are those big motherfucking birds, like condors or whatever? Like, dude, you peel the feathers.
Hey, first episode, we've really got some stuff going here. If you're watching in, I definitely just knocked the antelope off the wall. So.
We put it lower because we wanted it to be in frame, but now it is a hazard. But yeah, as far as dinosaurs and timelines, like that's another one of those things where it's just like so far above my pay grade, because like everybody's arguing about like the legitimacy of these facts these days, and like, you know, people go too far with the level of certainty that they have with things that you can't possibly know for certain, and that's my biggest gripe with, you know, other conspiracy content creators and UFO people and really anybody that's talking about controversial topics, is just like the level of certainty that these people have, and like the ego that they tie up into what they're saying is just beyond me. It's like, just take a minute and chill.
Yeah.
Just listen to somebody else for a second. And, you know, you don't have to believe everything that you're listening to. Like,
right.
you don't. And it's fine to hear other people's opinions without, you know, attacking them for the little differences that you have. And
and that's a good point to also say, like, don't take yourself so seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if Mr. Ham wanted to have dinosaurs on the ark, if it's for children's entertainment, fine, but don't tell them that is scientifically and historically the accurate depiction.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because, I mean, like I said, I think you at the same time, like, I agree with you. I don't think it's maybe the best thing to tell kids, but also like that's what a lot of people believe. And like I said, who knows? I don't know what the nature of reality is, so I'm not gonna act like these people are unintelligent for believing something that's just off the wall to my initial perception. Like, I don't know, it just leaves a icky feeling, and like doesn't leave that space for conversation and stuff, because I mean, just because they believe a crazy thing doesn't mean they can't teach you something else. Like,
sure.
And that's something that I think has been wildly lost among society as a whole. Is, you know, you hear somebody say one crazy thing and then they're dead to you after that, and we just don't know enough, I don't think, to make those kinds of assumptions and make those leaps in regards to people that we're talking to.
Yeah, I'm totally for that. And one thing that I've tried to not be that person, because that person is so annoying, that actually person. Well, I mean, like, so they'll tell you something and they're like, actually, it happened, blah, 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 blah. And I do not want to become that person. I don't want to be that person.
Yeah, but sometimes you just have to be, like, you can't let everything go. Like, you know, and there's a way to be the actually person without being a dick about it. Like, they don't necessarily go hand in hand with each other. But, yeah, I don't know.
Well, what's your hot take? Like, if there was a gun to your head and they're like, is aliens real or not? What are you saying? What's your gut feeling to it?
I would say that...
Actually, let me make this a two-parter. One, do you think they exist? And two, do you think we've been in contact with them? So there's two separate questions there.
Yes, I fully believe something exists beyond us. Whether it is another form of life entirely, Or, I mean, you can even, as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to talk about this kind of stuff, why not talk about time travel? You know, maybe this is something futuristic that we can't possibly understand, and that's what it's kind of manifesting as.
That's a really good point.
Like we said, I mean, like you know, that mixed with what we were talking about earlier about us making things look like things we understand. Like, you know, I think there's some synchronicity there, but
well, I mean, you've brought up a really good point of saying that we are only speculating what we know based off the laws of physics and gravity and science and the things that we know.
Yeah.
We're only basing the legitimacy of things existing because I can sit here and tell you that 5 billion years ago, somebody could have head towards Earth. Somehow they could see us. But unless they break the laws of physics, they've got even longer to get to us. I mean, it could be, you get what I'm saying, though. Just saying, like,
So, I mean, that's what some of this, like, drone technology and stuff, like, they talk about, like, anti-gravitic propulsion and stuff like that. And, like, that's, at that point, I think you're talking about a whole other set of rules as far as transportation goes.
And doesn't Lazar cover a little bit about that? Those machines that he was, that were supposedly in Area 51?
Yeah, he was one of the first people, I think, to really start talking about these details or start going into detail like that. Because, I mean, obviously there was stuff back in, like, the 50s, I think, is when some of the first, like, abduction stories and, like, sightings and, like, when Roswell was going on. It was 50s or, like, early 60s or something, I think. But, yeah, Bob Lazar was...
he was an engineer.
Yeah, he was an engineer. He, like, souped up a Mazda with, like, a jet engine or something like that and caught the attention of I guess a local lab or something. I don't know. I'm not super familiar with the story, but that's how he gets involved with Area 51 and the S4 location that he was supposedly working at. And I mean, I believe the Lazar story for the most part. I think, you know,
I've heard him talk about it. I mean, he doesn't look deranged or delusional.
Right, exactly. Like, and anymore, that's all you can really go with people. Like, they could be wrong about what they saw, but I don't think that he's lying about what he thought he saw.
Right.
And the way he understood what he witnessed. Like,
I like that distinction. Yeah.
Right. Like, and you got to keep in mind that just because you hear a story doesn't mean the story's 100% right, even if it's not a lie. Right. Like, so. Yeah.
What the more concerning part of when he was telling that story is, which I almost in a sense hope it's not true, are the threats that he was getting from security after he started talking about it.
Well, that is unfortunately probably like the most realistic thing about the story is the fact that
keeping your mouth shut.
Right, because I mean that's a whole other can of worms, but I mean there's obviously a lot of money disappearing into like military operations and stuff like that, and you know, what do I know about it? But you know, that money's going somewhere, and there's a lot of that money going somewhere. So I think it'd be kind of wild if we didn't have something going on as far as military research into things. And like, I don't know, there's a lot of different theories about Roswell and these other crash sites that supposedly we've drawn pieces of. I'd really like to at some point, maybe, I don't know how to like structure the episode or anything around it, but like I would like to really dive into some of the details on some of this stuff, like, because there's a lot of crash sites and stuff that you hear about, but you know, if you don't look it up, then you never know how much to believe of the story.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'd like to dig a little deeper into some of that before like committing to a belief around it exactly. Yeah. But yeah, to go back to the original two questions, yeah, I think there's something here for sure, and yeah, I think they're in contact. In contact is such a weird thing because, like if they're in contact, I don't know why they would be in contact with who they're in contact with, because I mean, you would have to guess it would be like, government leaders and stuff like that would know about this type of shit, or the deep state, or
Right.
Whatever that is. And it's just like, if that's the people they're associating with on Earth, then we're fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just by association with those people, they would presumably be up to no good.
Yeah.
I think.
Another thing is, it's all under the assumption that people don't want other people to know about this. And when I say people, like security clearance folks don't want the general public to know about these things. And my assumption is they don't want them to know about it because it's going to cause a panic or some sort of chaos or change the lifestyles of the general population.
Yeah. Well, I think
and the way they behave. So,
I mean, if there's a cover up, it's because they're making money off of it somehow. I mean, I think is probably the most logical jump to make there.
Yeah.
Whether it's, yeah, and I guess like to kind of dig into it critically, how would they make money off of technology that they can't show the public
or talk about? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that is a crack in that theory, but, yeah.
Well, they're making money somehow, or a lot of it gets funded from our, the taxpayers that we don't know about. I mean, it goes into like some sort of
I think
miscellaneous category.
Well, I mean, I think that's why like you hear about hammers that cost $40,000 on the budgets. Or the audits rather.
Yeah, and that hammer is actually going towards some more research on this antimatter or anti-gravity machine.
That was one of the things that kind of verified Bob Lazar's story was he talked about like element 51 or wait, no, not.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
it wasn't that's Area 51, and then it was like element something, whatever the next element on the periodic table would be. I'm not a scientist yet. But I don't remember what the number was, but it was like element 115, I think might have been what it is. Mm-hmm. But
you'll be smited in comments if you're not correct. Yeah.
But he had reported that to the journalist that kind of broke this whole story back in like the late 80s, early 90s. George Knapp down in Las Vegas, I believe, is where he started all this from. But he mentioned this element 115, and then like a few years ago, or maybe like 10 years ago or something, that I remember seeing like this big story about like element 115 being verified as like something that scientists were like working on now or something. And, maybe that was bullshit. Mm-hmm. I didn't look into it. I don't know. Yeah. But it's just an interesting thing to see things like that pop back up over time if it is true. And yeah, I don't know. I think ultimately if aliens are real and if they are here, then I think that there is probably not a clear-cut answer as far as like what science would think about it or what religion thinks about it. Like it's going to end up being this like weird mix of everything. And like, humans as a whole, I think tend to take a stance one way and then we overcorrect completely and we overcorrect and we overcorrect. And like, I think most things in this world are like, there's a middle ground where you find the most truth of the matter. And I think that's probably going to be the same way with UFOs. There's going to be, there's a reason why people believe some of the religious stuff they believe. There's a reason why scientists believe the very logical things that they believe. Mm-hmm. But there's something nobody's seeing yet, I think.
Yeah. And
once we understand whatever that is, then I think we'll understand these other things a lot more.
Yeah. Valid. I really only have two main things to say when it comes to extraterrestrial beings or activity. And the one big one is I no doubt think that they exist. There's too many planets that we know of for that not to be possible.
at least some kind of life. Whether it doesn't necessarily have to be like a civilization. But,
No, I mean it could be a little
find a
amoeba
bug.
growing in primordial soup.
Yeah, I'll be a little terrified if the first alien we find is like a spider or something. But
I'm just gonna go ahead and just check out.
Yep.
If that's the
alien spiders.
Yep. Not. But yeah, I think that I absolutely do think that they exist.
Mm-hmm.
I do not know if they've made it here. The big question is, where are they? We haven't seen them, at least from a space perspective. We see tons and tons of like IP. I'm going to call them IPAs, UFOs, or
UAPs.
UAPs, yeah. UAPs.
Yep.
Maybe they need an IPA called a UAP. Yeah, new marketing.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyways,
Merch store coming soon.
UAP IPAs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think one is if we consider the laws of physics, they just can't get here. We can't get there for sure.
Yeah. Right.
Or they have already been here. We just don't know they exist. Or we see them all the time, but they're not fascinated with us.
Right. That's like what I saw. Like, what I saw was a light in the sky, and what do we care about each other from where we're at now?
Yeah.
Like
And another thing too is like, imagine we are just far beyond advanced, and we can travel to another planet that we know has habitable beings on there. What's the first thing we want to do when we get there? Do we not want to engage with them? I mean, that's the human part of us, like to say like, hey,
yeah, you're kind
who
of
are
assuming
you?
that they have the same experience.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Or they
obviously,
could just
if
be
they've-
interested in our resources.
Well, if they're in spaceships and traveling through space, they've had a similar experience, you would think. Like, I mean, obviously there's some wiggle room to that, depending on, all spaceships aren't the same necessarily, and all travel isn't the same. What I think, go ahead.
there's this other theory too about we see a lot more alien activity now because they're concerned about our own well-being and our own self-destruction.
Well, that actually gets back into some like really weird biblical shit too. There is, and I'm not a biblical guy either. I'm not a scientist, not a biblical guy. let me be clear, but things that I hear about on the internet are things like the Book of Enoch, where this is a part of the Apocrypha of, I guess, like Catholicism. But in the Book of Enoch, and being Apocrypha, I guess there's questions as to if it's valid or not, who wrote it, where it comes from, these types of things. But I think it was in the Dead Sea Scrolls, for whatever that's worth to anybody. But they talk about the Watchers, and this is like, divine beings to some degree that would kind of, I guess, keep an eye as like the caretakers of the earth to some degree.
Yeah, they're the zookeepers, making sure the lions are eating their own food and not trying to eat everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's what I'm saying, man. Like, there's a lot of these parallels between like religious stuff and like some of this UFO, lore that you hear about. And
oh, I love talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. It's just, there's so much bullshit out there.
Yeah, I mean,
So much.
that's a valid for everything that's like, geez, I don't know what that is. There's 1,000 just like CGI computer generated crap.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, again, it just all comes down. Again, I keep saying this, but I feel like it just comes down to like, either they are here, they've already been here, we just don't know it, or they're here all the time and we see them, but they don't engage us because they don't care.
Right.
Or it's just like impossible for them to get here. So it could be any of those things, or we just don't understand like beyond our own laws of physics and means of science of how they would exist within our 3D world. So.
Yeah, see, something that I've heard before is that, like, potentially, like, you're thinking about it like they have to find a way to go through space fast enough. But, like, what if they figure out what space is as a material that can be manipulated? And like,
you're getting into wormhole space,
right?
Like folding time,
exactly.
Yeah.
That way, like you're not necessarily shooting yourself through space. You're like pulling space to you, and then fixing space.
I feel like we need to have like I know we would get like some copyright flame, but we need some like Star Trek music behind this right now. But.
Yeah. I'm so sure there's like a few notes you could change just to subtly change it. Don't. Yeah. But that's a fascinating subject, and I wish there wasn't so much bullshit out there. People make too much money off of this kind of shit anymore, and like also people are susceptible to like the kind of spiritual side of it as well. And like you start seeing people like running these scams where they're running these ascension courses for $333 so you can learn about, you know, which stars to connect with and all this kind of shit.
It goes even darker. Like I think back in the 60s and 70s, there was people that like sacrificed themselves for like the coming of some sort of like
that was Heaven's Gate. That's what that whole situation was called, I believe, was the Heaven's Gate ordeal. And yeah, it was a religious thing. There was a comet that was flying past. I think that was like down in Texas or something. I could be wrong about that. It doesn't matter where it was. But it was like these really, I think they were religious people, like culty Christian types or something. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, there was a comet that was going to fly past the Earth.
Okay, yeah.
And when the comet went past the Earth, they were going to kill themselves. And I think the idea is that their souls were going to like hitch a ride on the comet to go
take a ride on the information superhighway.
Like the comet was the vehicle that would take their souls to heaven, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but it's a sign. The government's after us already. We're on to the truth.
Yeah.
It's the only thing it could mean. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of ground to be covered, and we can do that as we move forward and in other episodes and stuff like that, because I think a lot of things weirdly kind of wrap back into like UFO kind of tangential areas and stuff. So, I mean, if we start talking about, you know, anything related to conspiracies and stuff, there's a good chance it ends up getting back to this kind of topic anyway. So,
yeah,
you know, I don't know. I think it's really good just to kind of broadly give our thoughts on the topic, you know, just so people know where we're coming from. And I think they can take what they want to from it, decide if they want to go for us on this ride or not, you know.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, if we're going to be doing a podcast about these kind of topics, it's going to be in the pursuit of learning more about them and like giving things a chance that maybe people wouldn't normally give much credence to. You know, I want to hear people out a little bit more, because I think slowly there's like these things that we're coming to understand as a society that, you know, we're understanding things aren't the way we thought they were. In some regards, and I think that's only going to get worse. This is probably a whole other episode that we could talk about. But are you familiar at all with the telepathy tapes?
No, I'm not. So it sounds like I've got some homework.
Yeah, I think, maybe we'll just sit on that, and you can look into it a little bit. Maybe we can talk about that another time, but that is a great example of a paradigm shifting idea that could be happening right now. Right now, it could be it has affected the way I view the world since I consumed this media. It's like I think there's 10 episodes to the podcast, as well as some other interviews that this lady's done.
Oh, okay. This is a podcast. Okay.
It's a podcast where I guess I'll briefly describe it, but then we can cut it from there. But nonverbal autistic children who are supposedly communicating with their teachers and mothers via these thought signals or something.
Okay.
And there's been some controversy in the past because this isn't a brand new theory. This has been speculated about before, but there's some pretty interesting details as far as how that situation unfolded in the past. And I've seen the videos of what they're doing now, and it's interesting. If they're not just straight up scamming the viewer, then they are about to release something that is groundbreaking as far as what we perceive reality to be.
Yeah.
In my mind.
Well, this is sort of a liaison in what we've been talking about this whole episode. Mm-hmm. I've heard stories. You've heard about alien abductions, like they'll come at night and this and that, and every one of them say the same thing almost.
There's beyond similarities.
Beyond the comical butthole probe thing, it's the conversations that they have with the aliens. They don't speak the same language.
Right.
But they don't speak at all, and they know what they're telling them.
Yeah, it's a lot of speaking into your mind type
so
shit.
This is a nice little liaison.
Yeah.
And you talking about these telepathy tapes.
The telepathy tapes.
So there's a lot of, just about, if you look at every instance where someone's talked about being abducted by an alien, it's usually always at night, and it's usually always they're being communicated to. They know exactly what their intentions are,
right,
and they don't say anything. So it's like they're giving them the message.
Right.
So,
well, there seems to be some kind of cross-pollination between what consciousness is and like what we think of as information. I think, like, that's another thing is like this savant. What do they call it? Savant. It's not like syndrome, I don't think. There's these savant traits that people have, and this is considered like natural born talents and stuff.
Oh, you're talking about the folks that can like remember like 8 billion sequence of numbers.
Well, that's a part of all this too. But the savant skills, at least in the way I understand it, is like kids that are 4 years old and know how to play the piano perfectly. Or there's been some, and I can't verify these. I don't the legitimacy of these things, but I've heard about like kids that know how to speak other languages that they've never been taught and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And if that's true, and like there's like this this web of information that we can pull from without physically learning it the way that we currently understand, then I mean that's gonna blow this world wide open as far as like what's possible. Yeah. And I mean it's gonna be an interesting thing if the telepathy tapes shape out to be true. Like it's gonna be a big deal for people.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to study up and learn up on all that, and then we're gonna have a pod on it.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on for quite a while about my thoughts on the podcast, and cool. Yeah, we can do that for sure.
Well, I think we should probably wrap it up. Any last final thoughts about UFOs, aliens, UAPs, IPAs?
I guess like if I'm gonna say anything about it, just keep an open mind. Stop thinking that anything has to be one way or the other just because that's what you've heard before. Because like there's plenty of reasons why some of this information would be covered up, and plenty of reason to believe that some of it obviously has been covered up. So, like, I don't know. Just everybody has to be cautious when dealing with anything like this, I think. Just be kind to each other. And, when you're, talking to your friends and stuff about this, if they say something that you think is absolutely crazy, just take a beat, and consider it more than you think you should, because, everybody's going to look like a fool in one way or another, I think, when it all shakes out.
No, I'm 100% with you. And I would like to challenge our 2 listeners today. Well, hopefully more than that. But if we have some listeners.
Our 2 listeners.
Yeah, our 2 listeners, 2 dogs, if you're watching on YouTube. Throw it in those comments, like, your experiences. What have you seen? Tell us your stories. I want to hear about them. And also, what else do you want us to talk about? Tell us that. Where do you want us to go? So I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, this has been a blast. Thank you, everybody. Farewell.
Hello, Earth. Have we met?